Well, recently, President Donald Trump made the decision to withdraw the United States from the Paris Agreement. This left many upset, considering climate change still remains an issue. Many organizations, such as the New York Renews, are for the Paris Agreement, and they're fighting renewable energy and much more. Joining us now to discuss the Paris Agreement, along with the New York Renews organization mission, please welcome campaign coordinator for New York Renews, Dan Jaime, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Obviously, a lot of concern for you guys as we continue to have this battle against climate change, and you're at the forefront of really trying to bring awareness to this.
Yeah. I mean, what we saw with the decision from President Trump yesterday, it was a historically immoral decision, a historically misguided decision, and a decision, frankly, guided by very undemocratic forces, right? These are the oil and gas dollars flowing into his cabinet, flowing into the billionaires. He sucked up the swamp and put it in Washington, and that's the kind of policy we're getting, right? It's policy that throws Americans under the bus. It throws workers under the bus. Donald Trump says his big line, right? Let's put America first, make America great again. What he's really doing is putting America last. He is abdicating our leadership on the greatest threat to human civilization today. He's also forfeiting American leadership on the clean energy economy, which is the future of energy, right? He's stuck in the past, and he's stuck in the past because he's bought and paid for by fossil fuel billionaires.
Well, let me talk about this. For people who don't know a little bit about the Paris Agreement, talk about the Paris Agreement. What exactly does that mean?
So the Paris Agreement was a historical accord agreed on by, I believe, 192 countries, so every country in the world besides Syria, Nicaragua, because they didn't think it was aggressive enough, and now the United States. So we're in the company of two other nations in the entire planet. All these countries, for the first time in history, agreed climate change is one of the greatest threats facing our civilization, and every country is going to work to reduce its climate pollution so we can keep our families and communities safe and keep civilization prosperous. Now, Trump's removal from the Paris Accord means that now American states like New York and California, who are some of the world's largest economies, need to step up and fill that leadership vacuum. If our federal government's going to keep its head in the sand, then we're going to do their work for them, and that's what the New York Renews Coalition is about.
And one of the big pushes that you have is about creating sustainable jobs.
Yeah.
So when you talk about creating sustainable jobs, how do you go about looking to push and make this happen?
Yeah, totally. So we have a bill that was literally last night in the dead of night introduced in the New York State Assembly called the Climate and Community Protection Act. And this would be the strongest climate, jobs, and justice legislation in the country, and it does three things primarily. The first thing, it was to make legally mandatory for New York to reach 100% renewable energy. That means wind, solar, geothermal energy efficiency by 2050. Which keeps our families safe from the effects of climate change. When Hurricane Sandy hit, my grandmother lives down in the Rockaways. She was trapped in her apartment for 4 days. We didn't know if she was alive or dead. She's 94 years old. This problem has come home to roost for New Yorkers, so this is about keeping New Yorkers safe. The second thing it does is it makes sure that 40%, minimum 40% of state energy funding goes to low-income, disadvantaged environmental justice communities. So those communities who have faced the burden of pollution here in the Bronx, highest asthma rates in the country, historically, those communities are going to get priority funding to build sustainability and to build resiliency to climate change. And third, you talk about jobs. This bill would mandate that all renewable energy jobs that receive any kind of state funding abide by fair labor standards. So as the clean energy economy takes off, we're not talking about McDonald's jobs, exploitative jobs. We're talking about good union jobs that lift people into the middle class. And the point about setting all of this in law is that's what you need to do to give clean energy investors the certainty that they need to come in, build projects in New York, like wind, like solar, like retrofitting all our building stock. Means making it more efficient. There's a huge amount of jobs there. Gives them the certainty they need to say, okay, I'm going to get a return on my investment because this is literally written into New York State's law. So we could see a huge renaissance in our economy, but we got to set the policy landscape to make it happen.
And you really talk about helping out New Yorkers, and I want to talk about how does how does New York Renew actually benefit, help New Yorkers in ways that sometimes we don't even know.
Yeah. So let's talk about the New York we're trying to create, right? Right now we have a New York that's vulnerable to the effects of climate change. We saw that with Superstorm Sandy. We have a New York where joblessness rates are higher than we'd like them to be, and there are a lot of jobs, especially in the energy industry, that aren't unionized. And we have a New York where a lot of communities, especially low-income communities of color, are facing disproportionate burdens from pollution, right? There's a reason why Bronx kids are going to Lincoln Hospital with asthma 2 times, 3 times a month, and Park Slope kids are sitting pretty, you know? That's called environmental racism, and we want to fight it. So what this legislation would do, if we talk about passing this legislation, what does the New York it creates look like? That New York is powered by entirely renewable energy, so families don't have to choose between turning the light switch on and making their kids sick, right? That's a false choice. We can create energy in a way that keeps our society healthy. So on the one hand, we're talking about making New Yorkers literally healthier on a day-to-day basis, safe from climate change. What we're also talking about is, right now, New Yorkers, when you turn on the light switch, you're not like invested or familiar with where that energy is coming from. You know, there's some system of wire, it leads off to a power plant somewhere. Who knows where that power plant is? What we're talking about with the renewable energy revolution is bringing that energy home, democratizing it. So when you turn on the light switch in your home, you know that light switch is coming from solar panels down the block that your friend helped build, you know? So a green job, a job where you're getting paid to install solar panels or wind turbines or to put insulation on buildings, that's not going to be an exception to the rule. That is going to be the most common type of energy job in New York. And there are going to be far more of them than there are currently jobs in coal, oil, and natural gas.
We're hearing more about climate change today. I remember, you know, when climate change was a foreign word. I think Al Gore was probably, former Vice President Al Gore was probably at the forefront of really changing our awareness about that. Talk to me about where we are today. How many more people do you think are we more aware about climate change? Is it where it needs to be? And how much more awareness do we really need to make across America with this?
So 2 answers to that. One is, if you look at the polling, a majority of people in every United States state, including red states, believes in the science of climate change, believes that it's being driven by man, and believes, or people I should say, and believes that we need to do something about it. A large majority of the United States was opposed to Trump's withdrawal from the climate accords. So absolutely people are beginning to wake up, despite all the money that the oil and gas industry has put into our political process to try to keep people asleep. Secondly, I think you're seeing it, so I should have talked about this already, I'm the campaign coordinator for this giant coalition of organizations across New York called New York Renews. And New York Renews, it's not just environmental organizations. It's labor unions, it's low-income community groups, including groups in the Bronx like The Point, Nos Quedamos, Northwest Bronx Community Clergy Coalition. I think the issue of climate change is the light bulb is beginning to turn on for people that this is not an environmental issue, right? This is not a save the whales issue. A whale, I love whales personally, but they're a thing out there, right? Whales they're not sitting at my dinner table eating the food I'm trying to put on the table, right? People are realizing that climate change is a problem that arises from and contributes to social, racial, and economic injustice. And that if we can tackle climate change, we can also tackle a lot of the inequality problems that are plaguing our society. So I think climate change is, more and more people are waking up to the urgency of the problem, and also we're starting to see this problem in a more intersectional context, if you will. It's not just about saving the trees or the rainforests. It's about, literally, it's a fight for survival. Right. Me as a young person, it's a fight for my future.
It's about making people aware, and Dan, you're doing a good job about that. If people want more information, what do they do?
Go to nyrenews.org. There's a Take Action page, and we will give you everything you need to advocate with your legislators, including your legislators in the Bronx, like Carl Heastie and Jeff Klein.
Dan Sherrill, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks so
Campaign
much.
coordinator for New York Renews.
Yeah.
Pleasure having you. You got to come on
Likewise.
back.
Yeah,
all right?
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Take a quick break. We got more open right after this. Oh, you stayed there a second.